Hello friends, welcome back to Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So lately I have been enjoying doing French press for my coffee in the morning. They're really not hard to use. You simply start off with a coarse ground coffee, measure it into your preheated carafe, add your hot water, give it a quick stir. I set my timer on my phone for 4 minutes. Put the lid on to keep it nice and toasty, and just wait for my 4-minute timer to go off. When it's done, very, very slowly push down the plunger, and that's it. French press coffee. I add a little splash of milk. And I head off to do my Bible reading. I shared recently how I had painted my kitchen cabinets, and I had ordered the handles for the sink side of the kitchen. The milk glass and jadeite handles that I get came from this place here, D Lawless Hardware. It is the best deal that I have found on those glass handles. I'll put a link to the place in the video description if you're interested. So with these brutal temperatures that we've been dealing with and the snow and the ice, I pulled out my Alaska boots. Haven't used them in a while, but they have been coming in very handy because, as you can see, it is cold and everything has been frozen. There's just ice and snow, and yeah, kind of reminds me a little bit of living in Alaska. These black rubber pans come in pretty handy when everything's been freezing because, as you can see, I can just beat them on the ground and break the ice out and then refill them again. And yes, I fill everything with hot water. There is an urban legend that says hot water freezes faster than cold water, but I actually learned that that is not the case when I took physics in school. And if you don't believe me, Mythbusters tested it out. Now the chickens really don't care for all of this snow, and so we actually put a path of straw from the door of their coop over to this sheltered area, and I just spread the feed alongside, and then they'll happily come out to the water and the feed. The day started off incredibly cold once again, but today we're supposed to actually get up to the 40s, and that is going to be nice because hauling buckets of hot water to the animals multiple times a day isn't easy. Now, my family thought I was silly keeping these Alaska boots. They didn't think I would ever need them again. But here you can see I'm walking across the stone bridge across the creek bed, and I don't worry about slipping one bit. So a couple weeks ago, I had Mr. Smith smoke a turkey for me out there in the wood smoker, and I had canned the meat and made broth out of the carcass, and it ended up turning out really, really well. So Mr. Smith smoked another turkey for me yesterday. He did it for the purpose of me canning it up again. And so that is what you can see me working on here. Mr. Smith just got done taking one of the dogs out there for a walk. And I will say that he was wishing he had some of those boot treads that I had from Alaska. He didn't keep his, but they would have come in handy for him. Now, when I canned the smoked turkey previously, I had a lot of questions and comments about it, whether it was safe to can smoked turkey, whether the flavor would hold up through the canning process, whether the flavor would become too strong. And I will tell you, it turned out wonderfully. And I have already used some of that canned turkey for making a soup, and it was delicious. The smoked flavor wasn't too powerful. It was actually very subtle. I was concerned with the broth having too much of that smoke flavor. And so when I made the soup, I only used half of the smoked turkey broth and then half chicken broth. But it turned out very well. So here you can see me adding cold water to my jars of cold turkey. Of course, if I was canning hot meat, I would use hot water with a hot canner. And you'll notice that while I had put the water up to the headspace level of just over an inch, as soon as I remove all of the air bubbles with my little chopstick wand here, you see how far that water level has dropped. And that just shows you that there was a lot of air pockets within that meat. That's why it is so important to do this step. Then you just simply add the water to bring it back up to the proper level. Now, I always wipe my jars down, no matter what I'm canning, with a damp rag that is dipped in vinegar. And you may notice that after I wipe a jar, I will use a new spot to wipe the next jar. And what you don't see on camera is after a few jars, I'll take that cloth and I'll rinse it out in hot water and continue using it for all of the rest of the jars. And I use vinegar whether I'm canning something oily like meat or jelly. It doesn't matter. Other people who do canning may use water or only use vinegar when they're doing things like meats, but doing the vinegar won't hurt anything, and it's just simply my preference for doing it. You can see I'm adjusting my lid for my All-American canner, making sure it's all nice and level before tightening the little wing nuts for the lid. And you actually tighten it down similar to when you change the tire on a vehicle. Not that I've ever actually done that, because Mr. Smith always has. But in theory, I do know that you alternate how you do it to make sure everything gets tightened down evenly. I double check to make sure it's still level, and then I tighten them opposite sides at the same time and just kind of rotate around until it's nice and snug. While my canner was coming up to temperature, I went ahead and I got my turkey broth or turkey stock going, adding in the water. I have the turkey bones and scraps there in the roaster, along with all of my onion scraps from the freezer. I always save my end pieces, the skins, and all of that in a bag in the freezer. And then anytime I make some broth or stock, I've got plenty to add into the roaster or stock pot. I added in some peppercorns, some apple cider vinegar to help the bones break down and release all of their wonderful nutrients. Added in some bay leaves. This is a great time to use the broken pieces since all of this will get strained out anyways. Save the whole ones for things like soup where you've got to find them and fish them out. I also decided to add just a little bit of salt to this, about a teaspoon for this whole roaster full of goodies. Give it a quick stir, throw on the cover, and I'll turn this up pretty high just to get it going, just over 350 degrees. And then once it's nice and hot and beginning to boil, I'll turn it down to about 220 and just let it go. Meanwhile, my canner's been coming up to temperature. I throw on the weight and I let it process. After it was all completed, time to pull out those wonderful jars of smoked turkey meat. Now this time around, as I was closing them up and putting the jars in the canner, there was one jar that actually kind of slipped out of my hand, and I tightened the lid down and put it in the canner. And afterwards I got to thinking, I think I might have tightened that particular lid a little too much, and it just kind of kept nagging me as the jars processed. And I was right. I had tightened that canning ring down a little too tight because, as you can see, the lid has buckled. I think this is maybe only the second time I've ever had this happen in all of my years of canning. But it just goes to show you that everyone can make a mistake sometimes. This jar will go straight into the refrigerator as soon as it's cooled, and I'll use it for a recipe tomorrow. That's it for today, folks. I'll talk to y'all next time.